Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Mount Mindset. I'm your host, Gio McNee, and in this week's episode, we're continuing our series about the comfort trap, property, and what you should do if you're looking at getting started in the property market. So one of the things that I did when I was developing the property series was give an explanation that explains what it's like when you go through a cycle of getting involved in property from an investment point of view. And the description I'm going to give you is I'm going to tell you the story of how I went through all of these players. We're going to describe players 1 through 4 and who they are, what they're like. You can identify where you're at, so you can figure out which one you currently are, and ideally where you would like to get to. But not just get the idea of where you would want to get to, you're also going to understand the steps that you would need to take to get from one level to the next. So it also serves as a great way of understanding if you're partnering up or you're looking to get some expertise, who should you be looking for? Because within these series of players, it's going to encapsulate all the different people that are involved in property. So why have I decided to do this? This is one of the things that people find is a barrier to entry. So one of the things that they're stuck with is they don't know where to start, they don't know what to do, they don't know where to get the right knowledge, and they don't really know what's the next step. So if you're feeling like that could be you, this is exactly what you need to hear, because what we're going to do is identify where you are, what's your next step, what do you need to focus on, and if you are needing some help, who should you be looking for? The reason that that's important is that you can find the right steps in the right order to get to your desired outcome. So the outcome that you want can vary. It varies from, to give you an idea of examples, take, for instance, myself. When I bought my first property, I had a particular outcome that I was looking for. I was looking to build up a property portfolio that paid some income, which was the rental was more than the cost of the mortgage, and each slice of that profit would accumulate up the more properties that I bought to make more money than my income from my job. So that was the idea. That was what I initially set off to do. Now compare that to today with all the wisdom, knowledge, experience and capital that I've got now versus the relatively almost non-existent capital I had then. I've went through all the series and all the steps from going from one end to the other. So who better to take you through all of those stages than myself, because I have been exactly where you are, regardless of where you are in your property journey. So whether you're right at the very beginning with nothing but a dream, or maybe you're pretty established and you're right at the other end and are really looking for what's the next challenge. Maybe you've felt that you've exhausted all the different things that you've got and you're looking for that new spin, that new angle to break through your glass ceiling and go to the next level. So let's start with finding out who the players are, because this is how I break it down. There's lots of ways that you can complicate it, and I like to make things very simple and straightforward. So I want you to imagine that the entire property industry is broken up into 4 players. So these 4 players represent the people that are involved, what they do, and what position they're in terms of how they can invest, how quickly they can invest, what type of deals they can invest in, and ultimately how close they are to their goal, their desired outcome that they're looking to achieve when they're doing properties. So some examples of the desired outcome that you might have: maybe you've got some cash there sitting that you want to put into a project and make that into a bigger lump of cash. So traditional strategies for that would be a flip. You would look to buy a property that's needing some work. It can vary from it's a shell all the way through to, it's needing a light refurbishment, some paint, some decor, maybe a bathroom or kitchen, all the way through to a complete gut out and a total redo. So there's a variance in how extreme that can be, and you can extend that to as big as your budget would allow. So there's deals out there that you can put as little as $5,000 of a refurb and add some value to it, all the way through to spending millions of pounds on, say, for instance, a castle. You buy a castle and you want to redevelop the whole thing. You want to make it into flats, or you want to make it into a spa or some sort of retreat. Then that's right at the other end of the scale. It's going to be a big purchase price. It's going to be a big cost. it's going to be a big project in terms of time. So these are the examples of things that are possible in the property industry. And what I alluded to last time is that there was when I was a young guy starting out, I got involved in sales. I worked in a mobile phone shop, and I was speaking to everyone. So people would come in, and you would speak to everyone from, the local kind of Ned all the way through to the CEOs that were working in companies that were passing. So I was working in a shopping centre at the time. So there was lots of through traffic, huge variety of people. And you would get an idea of what the stories, the backstories that they were doing. So it gave me a great insight into seeing the different types of people that I otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to, because I was probably speaking to 10 to 15, maybe sometimes 20 different people every day that came from different backgrounds, different economic situations. Some people had no money, some people had unbelievable money, some people were really busy, some people were retired, and everything in between. So I got to see a real spectrum of the types of people that were in there. Or in the world that came through this footfall through the shopping centre. And I was able to speak to them and, build up a bit of rapport pretty quick and find out a wee bit about their lives. And one of the curious things that I had as a 17-year-old guy was, how did the people that were doing well do it? Because there seemed to be a huge amount of people out there that were doing really, really well. And then there was, an amount of people that were doing okay. And then there was, pretty much the rest of the population that were just getting by. And then there were some people that were really struggling to get by, to give you, the broad spectrum of it. And what question I asked myself back then was, how did these people do well, and what do you need to do? Like, is there a barrier? Like, is it possible? Like, what if you could get, into the same sort of life that they have? How would you do it? What would you do? So that was why I enjoyed asking them questions. And I remember having a conversation with a guy. He was a property guy, and he explained to me, that I should buy a property. So at that point, I would have been what would have been classed as a player one. Now, player one is someone that has little or no money or capital other than their salary. Maybe have a little bit of savings, but nothing that's going to set the world on fire. And generally, you'll have a desire, as in you have an interest. You've got an interest in this thing called property. And coming back to the people that I spoke to, because it's an interesting segue, I'll add it in here, is the people that were very, very successful, that had all the sort of trappings of success. They were well dressed. They had nice houses. They had, they were in a great position. They could buy anything that they wanted. They generally had some cool stories about places that they'd visited, places they'd went on holiday. And it really was like the world was their oyster. There was no limits to what they could do. So I found it fascinating. And one of the things that I found really interesting about speaking to these people was the common denominator behind a lot of successful people was they were involved in property in some way, shape or form. So you can imagine me as a player one finding out that the people that had the lifestyle and the life that I would like to get to were all involved in that. The uniformal thing out of them all was they all had some sort of, property base somewhere. So to give you some examples, you might have a business guy that has bought the premises that his building is in. You might have, a guy doing haulage that's bought his yards and where his base of operation. You might have someone that's retired and they've done really well in their job and they've worked up through the property ladder and they've got a big house and then they've sold it and downsized, and all the money that they got from selling the big house is now free money for them. So you even getting through into sort of the property guys, which is where we're going with this podcast, is you had people that were using property investment as a tool. And for those of you that don't know, but prior to sort of around the early 2000s, buy-to-let wasn't really a product. Like, and the introduction of buy-to-let mortgages was around that sort of time, around the early 2000s. And that product started to come out as a tool that people would use. So there was lots of people that had started to dabble in investing in property. And the general idea was they'd done one of two main things. The first thing that they would do was they would buy a property and they would rent it out. And the cost of buying and servicing the mortgage would be lower than the rent that they would get. Now, the angle for this is that if you're buying an asset that's going up in value over time, the more of them that you buy, the more wealthy you become. So that's the first principle to buying a property, and holding it. The second angle is that if you can buy a property and have someone rent that from you and it covers the cost of you buying it, then that's a really interesting dynamic, because it means that you don't need to wear the cost of operating the property or servicing the debt on the property. It means that you can actually hold this asset, let it go up over time, and someone will pay you for the use of the property. So I found that really fascinating. And what really blew my mind as a player one was they would say to me, well, you would rent it out, and sometimes you would get more money from the rent than what it costs you to service the debt. Meaning that the more that they bought, the more that their monthly income was growing, because, say they were making, just keep numbers round, say they bought a property, the mortgage cost was £250. So they bought the property, they paid a deposit, and the cost for that each month is 250 quid. And say that they rented that property out for 500 quid. Then their gross profit was £250 and their cost was £250. So what would happen was every property they bought, they were adding £250 to their income. Now that was fascinating to me. And, if you think back in the early 2000s, if you were, earning maybe £2,000 to £3,000, that'd be a great wage. Maybe not so much today, but back then it was a lot more money than it is now. So if you could buy 10 properties, for instance, you could get £2,500 additional income, whilst you were holding these things that would go up in value. And from sort of 2002, 2003, there was a massive boom in the property, market. So lots of people were getting involved in this space. But the big thing that happened was all the properties started to go up in value. So it created an environment where people were investing in the property, and because banks were starting to create mortgage products that people could actually access buying these properties using a mortgage, because typically before, people that wanted to do rentals would need to have a sophisticated lending facility or be buying the properties in cash. So for the average man in the street that wanted to get started, that was probably out of reach. And as a player one, it was certainly out of my reach. So player one is, you've got nothing but a dream, you've got very little to no money, and you've absolutely no experience. And that was where I was at. So I was player one, and I had nothing but a dream, a fascination that all these people had a great lifestyle, and how did they do it? And really what I was trying to figure out was, would that be something I would be able to do? And if so, where would I start? And if you're watching this podcast and you're listening so far, this is exactly probably what you're thinking right now. For a lot of people, they get in the comfort trap. I guarantee if you're out there, you will be, if you're listening to this, you will have the ability, facility, or capital or means to get better and further on down the road in your investment life than you were where you currently are. And it means that you're in the comfort trap because you're not pushing the envelope of what's possible. And what I'd like to do is show you through the stages of going through player 1 through 4, identify where you're at, and then what your next steps are. So starting with player 1, which was me at that time, what did I need to get? The first thing I needed as a player 1, right? I'll put these down. We're going to put these up on screen. So player 1, as a young guy with no money, a little money, but nothing that was going to get me a property. I could maybe buy a toy house at the kids' toy store. That was it. So I had no money and I had no experience, but I had interest and I had motivation. I was enthusiastic about this thing called property. So that's player 1. Now, the thing with player 1 is your step as a player 1 is to do 2 things. And it may seem obvious, but believe it or not, a lot of people don't realise this is what you need to do. The 2 things that player 1 needs to do is they need to find a way to build up some money, right? So that's called building up some capital that you're going to use to buy a property. And the second thing that they need to do is they need to get an education, right? So they need to educate what it is that they're getting involved in and start to feel around for what's involved. Now, as a player 1, I'll tell you what I didn't know. I didn't know about regulations. I didn't know about lending. I didn't know about furnishings. I didn't know about doing refurbishments. I didn't know about maintenance. I didn't know a plumber, a joiner, a gas engineer, or anything. I didn't even have a solicitor. So I couldn't, I didn't know where to start. So the first thing is a player one should do is get an education. Now, there's lots and lots of free resources out there that can explain what it is that you can do. Now, I started by reading a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that was a great book. I'd definitely recommend it, written by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a great book, and it explains essentially the fundamentals behind buying property and why it's a good idea. Robert does a great job, so if you're interested in that book, I would definitely recommend it. And he tells a story about his two dads. One dad was rich and one dad was poor. And I'll not spoil the book, but it's not what you think it would be. So player one is you need to get the thing that you can get for free is education. So you can consume podcasts, you can get some free content, you can get books, you can listen to audible books and so on. So what you're looking for is the type of content that you can consume that the people that are creating the content have done what it is that you're wanting to achieve. Right, so you're looking for those players that are giving you free information to get you up to speed. So what I would do is start to absorb that information and make that part of your day, and then start to feel around for what that is. And what I would recommend doing is start to network. So spread the word that you're interested and start to reach out to people that are good at doing this type of thing. So it's player one. If you have no capital and no clue, and I mean that in a nicest jesting way. So you have no clue what to do, but you are motivated, you are enthusiastic. This is what you want to do: is find a way to build capital. So side hustle, look at self-employment. Can you work more hours? Is there any bonuses on the go? That type of thing. Education. Where can I consume free content? Who's been where I want to get to? Like in my example, I was asking guys that came into the store who had been where I wanted to go and asked them where to get started. So the other things that you can do is start looking around at the property market, have a look at the area that you're in, have a look at what's going, how much are things are to buy, how much are things to rent out, and do some basic calculations. You can go into a mortgage calculator. You can go in and calculate how much it would cost on a mortgage and then compare it to the rentals and do some basic things like that. Really, really rudimentary stuff, but a great way to exercise that muscle and get started on your education piece. And the great thing is what I did was I networked, which was I asked people that were good at what they did and found out what tips and tricks that they would recommend. So as player one, that's the first thing you can do. Now on the links on the show notes to this video, there's going to be a download for the checklist where you can check where you're at and you can tick off the boxes to see which one of the players you're at. So you don't need to remember all this. If you're taking notes, great. But if you want to download that link, it'll be there on the show notes. So go check that out. And also drop a comment and follow me for more of this type of content. But if you drop a comment in there for anything that you feel that would be helpful in the next series, I'll be sure to cover them off. So moving on to player two. Who is player two? Now, player two is an interesting one. I would say that out of the four categories of players, player two was the type. I didn't really spend a great deal of time, if any, as a player two, and you'll come to understand why. So let's dig into player two. So player twos are interesting, and the reason player twos are interesting as characters is they will generally be involved in the sector in some way. Now, let me explain that. When you're purchasing a property, you're going to deal with particular services. So you're going to deal with an auction house or an estate agent or some service, possibly even a letting agent that's selling a property. You're going to deal with solicitors who will do the conveyancing for the sale. You're going to deal with mortgage brokers who will arrange finance and funding for your purchase. You're going to deal with contractors, so plumbers, joiners, builders, gas engineers, and things like that. And you're going to deal with other professional services, things like architects, planning consultants, and things of that nature. So there's a wide scope of people that are involved in the sector who could be working and have interest in getting involved in the sector and they're different from player one because they have some knowledge. Now, here's an example. A player two will be in a similar capital position, so they'll be working and they might have some money or no money, right? So they have no capital or some capital, but not enough to get rolling, okay? They have some clue, right? So they will have a clue, which is there'll be something that they know quite well about the sector. Now, remember, it doesn't mean that they know everything, because just like a plumber can't do the legal conveyancing and the solicitor can't do the plumbing work, each character has a part to play in the process of going through a property purchase. So just because you find a player two, it will most often be someone that is good at a particular part, but they will have some expertise that's useful. So they will come back to that and why that's important. So player two will be the same as player one because their capital positions are similar, and they'll have enthusiasm because they want to get rolling in this game called property for investment and to start to make moves, because they will also, because they'll be involved in the sector, be exposed to people that are doing well and getting a result. So they have the difference between player one and player two is they have a clue. Now, player twos have a bit of an advantage because not only will they have some experience that they're good at, they will also have an easier route to network, because they will have where they're at or what their contact list looks like, or what their business contact list looks like, will give them contact information for people that they can network that will be actually very useful. So if you're a player two, that's an advantage that you should take full advantage of, because if you start to network, then there's the old cliche, your net worth is your network, or your network is your net worth. Can't remember which way around it is, but we're in the people industry, so it's very, very good if you know what it is. If you have these contacts, it'll make it much easier for you to network. So the networking point is the same as player one, and it's very, very useful. You have the education piece, which means is slightly different, because you'll have education on a particular thing that you'll be well educated on, and you've got some other things to get up to speed on. Now, to give you an example, you might be a contractor. You can get all the trades in, you can do a refurbishment, and you've got that down pat, you're dialed in, but you maybe don't understand the regulation, or you don't understand financing. So what you would want to do is start to get your head round financing. So what you might want to do is go into your contact list or ask for a referral or a recommendation to a mortgage broker and ask them to say, look, this is my plans, this is what I'm looking at doing. And remember, from the player one list, start looking around your area, start looking at properties that are attractive to you, and then have a conversation with a broker about what your plans are and say, look, this is what I'm looking to do, and I'm just looking to get my head around the basics to figure out what I need to know so that I can get up to speed. So the education piece, you'll have one bit that's probably really quite good and strong, and you've got other bits that you can strengthen up on. So the education's still the same thing. The big, huge thing that you have to your advantage is you have a service that you can offer. So remember, player one had to go and find a way to build up capital. That would have been like side hustle, overtime, bonuses, commissions, all these sorts of things, but no direct lead in to the industry that they could capitalise directly. Player two might have that. So for instance, you might be a contractor, you have all the services, and you might want to offer your services to say, if anyone's looking for someone to organise all the refurbs and all the trades and monitor the project and make sure it goes smoothly from start to finish, I can do that. I can provide that service. And what will happen is they can charge a fee for carrying out that service, and that fee is something that they can use to build up their capital pot. Remember, player two is going from capital pot, a low or nothing, and wanting to build it up. So that's a great side hustle that matches your talents and skills, that's available that you can start to capitalise on. So really, really good idea for player twos. Okay, so player three. Player three is really interesting. So player three is interesting because they have lots of capital and no clue. Now, remember, we're saying this in tongue in cheek. They will have the capital, no clue, but a deep interest in getting involved in property. Now, how people come into capital and want to deploy it into property are vast. So you can have someone that has a great business and they're looking to diversify some of their money. They're looking to get their money put into other assets that shield them from market turns, volatility, and maybe they just want to get into a safe asset like property. There are 3 significantly strong performing asset classes that over time have performed well in market turmoil. You've got gold as an inflation hedge and income generating real estate. And I'll leave the third one for you guys to guess because it's a good one, but I'll leave it for your minds to wander, and maybe you can drop a comment in if you know which one it is. Now, player 3s could have a successful business. They could have inherited money. They could have, won the lottery, just throwing a wild card out there. They have some means that they've came into money through some vehicle that means that they want to do something with money. And the great thing about player 3 is they generally will have the knowledge to do something with it. They might not know the intricate parts of how to do it, but they definitely have the wherewithal to say, hey, look, I'm going to put this into something that will achieve a better result than what it's currently doing sitting in the bank or whatever it is. So player 3 has lots of capital, no clue, and high motivation or high enthusiasm. Now, the first thing that I would say a player 3 needs to get is to consider teaming up with a very exceptionally experienced player 2. So things that you're looking for is like an unbelievably good letting agent or an unbelievably good, so say your route to market or your route to performance is lettings. You want to get a really, really good letting agent. Conversely, if your route is you want to flip properties, you want an exceptional building team. You want to have the best guys that can turn it around quickest possible time, lowest chances of things falling out of bed. They are good, efficient, do it at speed. They'll not be the cheapest, but overall they are the best value. So you want to team up with a really good player 2. So a player 2 could be letting agent, management company, really good. A lawyer's a really good one as well. Things that you wouldn't think of. So see if you've got a really good broker and you've got a really good lawyer. I have great relationships with brokers and lawyers and even estate agents. Estate agents are actually the one that, they get probably the hardest rap because they're the ones that are stuck between the rock and the hard place. They're trying to keep sellers happy and they're trying to keep buyers happy. And generally, the buyer's looking to get it as cheap as possible. The seller's trying to get it for as much as possible. And it's managing that whole situation. So, and this is what I mean. If you've got a really good estate agent, a really good mortgage broker, or a really good lawyer, they generally will stick to their area of expertise. But the reason that they're good is you can get deals brought to you first, that because you have capital and you're a serious player, they will bring them to you. More of a player 4 thing, but it's definitely, as a player 3, I'm going to show you how you can become a player 4. And if you have interest in these things and you're good at networking, this is a perfect play. So team up with a solid player 2 or a player 4. Now, player 4s are rarer, harder to come by, and if you can get one, they're like hen's teeth. They're worth their weight in gold. Expect to pay a serious premium for a player 4 to entertain you, and I'll come on to exactly why. But a really good player 2 will do the job. So things, as I said, to recap, the things that you're looking for, really good brokers, really good lawyers, really good solicitors, because they will be seeing these deals in the market first, and they will know what's coming up. You'll get it's like having your ear to the ground through them. Really good resources. Then letting agents, management companies, and builders. They're your ones that they will actually execute the performance for you. So you think if you're doing a flip and the building team do a really good job with low downtime, high standard, and it's very, very appealing for the market, you've got a much better chance of selling that property on and getting a good return, because the properties, they've added such a decent amount of value the way they've done it. It's very appealing for the market. People pay a premium for that. Letting agent, again, if you're looking for cash flow and that agent's good and they're on the ball and they can get results, they can get a return for you that it's really all about what it generates after you buy it. If you've got a good agent, that's number one, because they're the ones that are going to be driving the returns for you. And the same with a management company. If you're getting involved in SAs, so which is serviced apartments, Airbnb, Booking.com style properties, get a really good management company. So if you want the links to who I would recommend, check below in the show notes, because if you want to speak with them, great place to start. And so player 3, what I would also say as a player 3 is build up a basic education. So you might have little or none or some education, just get up to speed with the basics. And that doesn't mean you need to get into the nitty gritty. That's why you team up with a player 2 or a player 4. You just want to know the basics about funding and the basic follow through, which is, right, how do I find the property? Like the very first thing, and this is why I always start with goals. Check out my visualization series, because see, the visualization series is derived from how you build a property portfolio from being a player 1 through a player 4. You need to have a vision of where you want to go. And this is why you always start with the vision, is what is it you want to do. So as a player 3, you have all that capital there and you don't know what to do with it. What result would you like? What's the vision for it? And then you start to construct the path to get that. So start with what you want, and then that then filters into the right properties that you should aim at. So you don't want to buy a flip if you're looking for cash flow, and if you're looking for cash flow, don't buy a flip. If you're looking for cash flow, don't buy something that needs huge capital appreciation, which, and we'll come on to that. That's nuanced stuff that we'll come on to. Don't need to worry too much about that. What it basically means, translated in simple terms, is there's different properties will get you different types of results. So depending on which result you want to aim for the right property. And that is it in a nutshell. So finding the right property, then it moves to how you execute. If you're funding it, if you're mortgaging it, the surveyor will do the conveyancing, the searches, and make sure everything's in order there. And then if you are either handing it straight out to the market because it's walk-in condition, or you need a refurbishment, you get your refurbishment team in, and just get the basics on that, because all of these people you can appoint. You can appoint an expert, a really, really good player 2 or player 4, can help guide you through that. You can instruct a solicitor, you can instruct a mortgage broker, you can instruct a management company or a letting agent or a builder. So again, it's just getting the basic skeleton framework so you can get up to speed. And again, another thing I would recommend, I always recommend this, is network. So reach out to people, let them know your intent, start to engage with them. Consider if, like, one of the best things that you can do, in my experience, is if you have access to someone that has the information that you need, and if they offer a service where they'll do consultancy for you, or they'll do some mentoring, if you like, where they'll say, look, I know what you want to do, I've done it, I can give you some guidance on how to do it best. Definitely take them up on that. That's one of the things that I've been very, very good at. Whenever I've had the option to get highly specialized professional resources or information or insights, I'll always buy it, because you skip all the learning. You've got someone who's the best in the game at what they do. Get the information straight from source. And I have never seen a time where, no matter how much that wisdom has cost me, it's paid me back tenfold, because I've made so little mistakes, so little errors, went straight to the juice of the market, where's it performing the best, and found the right type of properties right off the bat and got dialed straight in. So definitely consider that. And if you have capital, you have the ability and means to purchase that type of relationship. You can buy into that, a pay for play or a pay for access. If you can see the value in it, which ultimately you will, definitely do it, because you can leap ahead in a massive jump. So as a player 3, that's what I would suggest you do. And then you move into the environment of the player 4. Now, the player 4 is very interesting. And as I said, they're pretty rare, and they're rare because most of the market are either 1, 2 or 3. And the guys that make it out from either player 2 or player 3, and even player 1s, the player 1s, there's a huge amount of player 1s, but only a certain few of them make it through to player 4 level, player 4 status. The thing that a player 4 has is they have lots of experience, right? So they know exactly, they have lots of a clue, and they have lots of capital. And if you can get access to them, they will be exceptionally good at what they do, because they have lived it, breathed it, know all the parts, know all the corners of the market, know all the players, know all the pieces that are involved, and they've got a track record of making it work, because that's where their capital came from. If they've got lots of capital, it came because they've mastered the art of this. They've mastered the art of it, their network's dialed in, their education's on point, their experience is there, their track record's in place, and they will generally, you will know when you talk to them, because you know when you're speaking to someone, you're like, man, you've got it. And that's what a player 4's got. And to get to player 4 status, there's a couple of things that I think are important as a player 4, is that if you are a player 4, I would say never stop learning. So one of the mistakes that I made, I say mistake, I'm saying it, being a bit critical of myself. One of the mistakes that I made was I got to the place that I wanted to be, mastered it, completed it, checked it off, and then didn't really look around. And it wasn't until, sometime later I realised, well, look, what else is there? So I went and looked at other investments, and interestingly, it was not a bad thing, because it made me a much better investor. I looked at other vehicles, other instruments, what the world looked like as a whole, what the finance sector looked like, and got a real good texture of what it is that being a really good investor, not just a property investor, is. And then when I came back and looked at it through the lens of my new wisdom of the bigger picture and looked at the property world, one of the things that I thought is there's lots of little nooks and crannies that I can explore even further. And that gave me a much higher enthusiasm for what I was doing. I spotted a great opportunity that has been on a tear. The market is growing at 10% annually, which is unbelievable, and is on target to be in the hundreds of billions very, very soon. So spotting these types of things is because you never stop learning. The second thing that I would recommend if you are a player 4 is help the rest of the players. And help player 1, 2 or 3. Now the reason being I would say that is give out some knowledge, because once upon a time I was a player 1 and I didn't know I didn't know my arse from my elbow. When someone said to me, I'm into property, I thought literally, does that mean you go in the door or the window? I didn't know what it meant. That was how completely naive I was to this explanation of like getting into property. So I've been through all the steps. I know what it's like. And what I would say to you is that if you got this far, identify which one you are. Are you player 2? Do an audit, do a check. What capital do you have? How much is the minimum capital you need? So I'll give you an example. If you want to buy a buy-to-let property in Scotland, the minimum sort of capital that you would need to get is around 20 grand. I would say that would be the minimum. It's going to get you access to some of the market. You could buy a buy-to-let and you can make that work. So if you don't have 20 grand as a player 1 or as a player 2, find the first way to get to 20 grand. Now, don't look at it as a big nut. If you've got 0, then focus on saving 1k and then double it up to 2k, and then what other things can you do and build up that pot. Never give up on your dream. So if you've got a dream, just like when I started, I didn't have any money. There was no, the life that I live now is unbelievable compared to what I thought then. I would have said that, you were, you're wired to the moon if someone like me could have done what I've been able to do. So don't give up on your dream and keep pursuing it. Find a way to get there. And help them get there, because it's that little bit of encouragement we need. So if you're a player of 4 out there, get involved in helping them out. It might be free advice. It might be going to networking events. Just go along and give them the nod and tell them, hey, look, keep going. Because I'm going to tell you, there's way, 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 way more of a pie out there. There's no need to fight over it. There is more than enough to go around. So if you're interested in this property game and you want to get up to speed really, really quickly, then it can be done. Now, when I started out, one of the things that I struggled with was that there wasn't an available amount of information. There was nobody that was like, hey, if you want to get into property, here's how to do it. There was none of that. So there was just like little fragments of information. So you had to figure it all out by going and meeting people, asking the right questions, piecing together their answers to get a picture of what it is that you could do. In today's world, you've got everybody is telling you a variety of different things about what way to do it. And quite frankly, I've seen some of them that are I don't know where they're getting the information. I don't know if they're regurgitating something that they've heard, but it's wildly off. And then another interesting side of that is there's some people that are really sharp, really, really shrewd. So you've got everything from con men to I don't know a thing to people that are really, really shrewd. And it can be hard to disseminate which one's which. That's why I'm giving out the free advice. You can check this checklist, tick it off, and make sure if you want to get started, run through this checklist. I'm going to be providing more of these resources for free to get you up to speed so that you know which direction to point in. And as I said, whether you're player 1 or you're player 2, get to player 3, to team up with player 3, because what happens is if player 3 is paying services to player 2, player 2 can build up their capital pot quickly. If player 1 can get the education piece so that they've got some sort of service they can provide, they move into player 2 status. Player 2 can hook up with player 3 because one has the knowledge and the other has the capital, and they can come together. And ideally what they're looking to is combined, they're going to get at some point to player 4 status, because the capital's helping each other, the knowledge is helping each other, and one will complement the other. And then once you're in player 4 status, keep learning, keep developing. Remember, the property market always moves, it always changes. There's new things that are coming on, on board. So just like in the early 2000s, there wasn't a mortgage product for buy-to-lets. Now we've got serviced apartments, we've got holiday lets, we've got houses in multiple occupancy. We have a variety of different new things that are out there. So these are the things why it's good to keep on the cutting edge of doing this thing called property. If you need a player, a player 4 to hook up with, I might know someone. Check out the show notes. If you're looking to invest in property and you're a player 3 and you like the things that you've heard here today, click the link if you're a player 3 and you want some expert advice and you want to cut through the noise and the hassle. There's going to be a video that I'm going to do, which is a walkthrough. I'm going to take you a walkthrough from one of our player 3s who's went through the entire process from I'm interested in getting a property all the way through to that property earning. And if you would like to see something like that, which is going to be a full walkthrough, I'm going to record it end to end and I'm going to walk you through step by step. So I think it'd be great for a player 1. I think it'd be great for a player 2. I think it'd be great if you're a player 3. And if you're a player 4 and you just want to see what the movers and shakers are doing, check it out. Register your interest and let me know if you want to see that. I will go through all the process, start to finish. And what it will do is it will help show you what's possible. It'll move you out this idea that you think that it's not possible for you to do, because you're going to spot, oh, I could do that, I could do this, I could do these things. And it's going to show you that these things are way closer and way within your reach. And if you do some nice, straightforward planning, work to that plan and have a vision of where you want to go, I would highly recommend it, because it's certainly done wonders for my life. And if you have that enthusiasm, I would pursue it, because it can do wonders for yours. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Mount Mindset. I hope we've covered off the 4 players and what can get you started and involved in property and start making these things happen. If you need a player 4, we have access to that. If you'd like a service company that can execute on all the things you need, if you're a player 3, we've got you that. If you're a player 1 or 2, the nice checklists are for you. And guess what's coming up? I'm going to be building an education series, which is a list of videos where I'm going to take you through each of the different sections so that you can get up to speed, so that you can arm yourself with all the knowledge and wisdom you need to actually take action. And it's not going to be hocus pocus stuff. You can compare it to the video walkthrough that I've done, to the way that I break down deals, to the way that I can analyse and spot the market, and show you how it all works so you can get a real inside look. So stand by for that, because that's coming very, very soon. I'm in the process of recording them just now. And once they're polished up, you can have a look. And if you are interested in that type of content, drop a comment or fill in the contact form and register your interest. But from me this week, that's a wrap.